getting tied up in a meeting with the League of Municipalities in downtown Pittsburgh, so which is very important because our municipalities are really the heart of what we have in this community, and it's great to be here. It really is. I love coming to Bethel all the time. I served on county council since at the very beginning. With a great councilman who worked in this area, and I say that even though he was a Republican, and Vince Gaskeb, who I served with since the beginning, and we call it the new government, but I guess it's not so new anymore. 14 years old, 15 years old when we voted the Home Rule Charter in 1998. And it really has, I think, transformed a lot of things that have happened in this region. First of all, it's given representation to communities like Bethel Park and Monroeville and Moon that really didn't have them in county government before. When we had the 3 county commissioner system, for the most part, all 3 county commissioners came from the city of Pittsburgh. Every once in a while there might be a little bit of change of that, but I think the fact is, as our region has changed, and when you think about how the population shift has changed over the years, 3/4 of the people in Allegheny County used to live in the city of Pittsburgh. Well, that has obviously changed. Now 3/4 of the people who live in Allegheny County live outside of the city of Pittsburgh. So that government that we put in place about 15, 16 years ago has started to reflect that. The other thing that I think has really changed is the position that I serve in right now as county executive. We really never had one central office in which problems that we were trying to deal with and solutions we were trying to solve were in place. And we had 3 county commissioners and the mayor of the city of Pittsburgh. You kind of had 4 people in charge, really. In some ways, you had nobody in charge. Well, now you have one central office with the county executive office. Whether it was Jim Roddy, whether it was Dan Honorato, and hopefully now me, that we can make sure that we can bring people together and work together to solve some of the critical problems that we have. One thing I do want to say, and it's good to be here the night after that we got the big vote in transportation, because I think it was a critical vote for this region and the Commonwealth, quite frankly. And I give Governor Corbett a lot of credit for his willingness to put his neck on the line and go out there and fight for that. In Western Pennsylvania, in Allegheny County, things are changing, and probably changing faster than many of us realize, particularly with the people who are living here and the people who are moving in here. For about 30 years, we were stagnant. We were not growing. In fact, we were shrinking because of the loss of the industrial base that we had that started to erode in the late 70s and early 80s. And we saw an absolute exodus of young people that occurred for really 30 years. And I think the best example of that we all know, and if any of us are Steeler fans, and I'm assuming 1 or 2 of us out there are, is when the Steelers go on the road and they're playing in Denver or Indianapolis or Charlotte or wherever they are, and you see all those yellow towels waving. You see thousands and thousands of people waving that are Steeler fans. And the announcers always say, boy, don't those Steeler fans travel well. Well, that's not exactly right. I think they don't understand it. What happened is that for 30 years, Pittsburghers moved to Indianapolis and Denver and Charlotte and some of those cities because they had to for jobs. But because they left Pittsburgh, didn't mean that Pittsburgh left them. So every week, they get together at a Steelers bar in whatever city they're in to reconnect with other Pittsburghers. And by Pittsburgher, I don't mean you had to live in Brookline or Greenfield. Whether you lived in Butler or Mount Lebanon or Monroeville or Bethel Park, you were a Pittsburgher. And again, for 30 years we had that. Well, that's changing now. This generation that's coming out of school now, the people in their early 20s and 30s, are staying. They're staying in numbers that we haven't seen before. Not only that, but other young people are moving here as well for jobs that are occurring. And the best statistic that I can give for that, I don't know if anybody saw this statistic that the Census Bureau put out just a few months ago. They talked about the under 5 population. The under 5 population. In America, the under 5 population over the last 2 years, 2011, 2012, has decreased by 1%. In the state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in 2011, 2012, the under 5 population has decreased also by 1%. But in Allegheny County, in 2011, 2012, the under 5 population has actually increased by 1%. We're bucking the national trend. Now, why is that? Well, it's not because the 3- and 4-year-olds are getting on their tricycles and moving to Pittsburgh. That is really not the reason. No, it's because young people, young families are living here, are moving here. People in their 20s and early 30s are growing here in Western Pennsylvania. And why? Why is that? Jobs. Well, lots of reasons. Quality of life, it's a great place. We all know it's a great place to raise a family. We all know it's affordable. There was just a story last week about affordable housing, family connections, roots, all that type of thing. But all those things kind of don't matter if you don't have a job. If you can't make a living, you can't support your family, you can't stay in the place that you love. Well, that's changed. We now have jobs that are growing in Western Pennsylvania. In fact, we're growing jobs here faster than the national average. One of the highest growing job places in the country, in the top 5 over the last couple of years. And what are those jobs in? Well, they're in a lot of different things. Used to be heavy manufacturing and steel is where we primarily did things. We still make a lot of steel. We still have steel mills that are doing well. U.S. Steel over in Clairton, invested $800 million into an upgraded coke plant. Allegheny Technologies is going to be cutting the ribbon up in Brackenridge on a $1.5 billion stainless steel plant. We're very, very big in manufacturing, as we always have been, but we've also diversified. Energy is a huge component of what we're doing. Marcellus Shale, the fact that Chevron and Shell and Range and all these companies that you read about are growing and growing very, very, very in a very big way here. Finance, PNC Bank, huge investment in downtown Pittsburgh, a $400 million tower, that they're building with their own money, not government subsidies. They're building it with all their own money. BNY Mellon, when Bank of New York bought up Mellon Bank just a few years ago, we were concerned that everything was going to move to New York. Well, guess what? They've grown more jobs in Pittsburgh. Why? Because Pittsburgh's affordable. Those 7,700 employees that work in downtown Pittsburgh, it's a lot more cost effective for BNY Mellon to be here than it is in New York City. The IT business, Google. Google is located, their East Coast operation here in Pittsburgh. They certainly have a West Coast operation out in Silicon Valley, but they're also here and they're growing like crazy. And we have a burgeoning IT business, IT industry here in Pittsburgh. Life sciences, we all know about the eds and meds, the UPMCs and the universities, our great university centers that continue to grow. So across the sector, across the industry sector, we have a lot of good things going on. And all you have to do is, if you work in downtown Pittsburgh or you work in Oakland, when you drive to work every day, you realize with that traffic jam how many people are going to work. Doesn't matter if you're going on the 7 to 3 shift or you're going at 6:30 in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. Our roads are crowded. Get on the Parkway West. Try to come from Moon Township. Try to come from Robinson. Try to come from some of those areas, and you realize how much we are growing. Places like South Point, up in Cranberry, out by the airport. And, and by the way, downtown Pittsburgh is doing as well as it has ever done. We have one of the lowest vacancy rates in the country for any urban area in downtown Pittsburgh. Probably on Friday night, we're going to have about 300,000 people that will be in downtown Pittsburgh for Light Up Night. Just a month ago, we had 500,000 people in downtown Pittsburgh on a Friday night. Friday night. Think about what Friday nights are like in Western Pennsylvania. Jim knows what Friday nights are like. That's football night. But you know what? They were still there. And you know what? The Pirates weren't in town. The Steelers weren't playing. The Penguins weren't playing. We had 500,000 people in downtown Pittsburgh, young people in downtown Pittsburgh. And you know what they were down here to see? Yo-Yo Ma was opening up at Heinz Hall. The Lion King was at the Benedum. Our Town was at the Pittsburgh Public Theater. We had an arts gallery crawl at all the arts galleries down in the Cultural District, and we had a duck. I think the duck grew a few people. But when you think about that, we're obviously sports crazy and big events crazy and fireworks crazy, but that many people were showing up for arts and culture. I think it goes to the diversity and what's happening here in our region. And I think you could probably all tell stories or have an anecdote in your neighborhood about somebody that moved into your neighborhood recently who wasn't from Pittsburgh. who may not even look like Pittsburgh, or they're from another part of the world or another part of the country, and we're growing immigrants again. We're growing a diverse population, and it's going to be healthy for all of us. Now, the question is, how do we manage growth? That's a kind of a good problem to have, a problem we didn't think we were going to have just 10 years ago or 15 years ago. But we are. We're growing again. How do we do that? How do we provide the roads that are going to get people to work? How do we grow a transit system, a mass transit system that's critical? Because these young people that are moving in, they don't want to drive their car to work. They want to use mass transit. They want to go on bike trails. They want to use different ways of getting around than my generation did. So we've got to make sure that we provide those kind of services. And again, how do we do that? Does Bethel Park do it all by themselves? No. Does Mount Lebanon do it? We all got to work together. We all got to figure out a way that makes sense for all of us to work together to put that kind of infrastructure in place. How do we have how do we deal with a decaying and aging infrastructure system when it comes to our sewage systems, when it comes to our water systems? How do we provide good, safe drinking water? How do we make sure that when it rains, we don't have overflows going on into our sewers? I'll give you one story that really, kind of amazed me. I don't know if anybody here does a triathlon. I don't. But what it is, for those of you that don't know, you swim a mile or two, you run like 30 miles, and you bike like 100 miles. So the people that can do this are in really, really good condition. They're really healthy. They're about as healthy as anybody can be. So this summer in downtown Pittsburgh, they had a triathlon, and they had these great athletes. Well, it happened to be the day after we had a rainstorm. So what happened? So these swimmers got in the river, and they got sick. Why? Because they were swimming in raw sewage. Why did that happen? Well, because we have an aging infrastructure that can't handle when it rains. We send raw sewage right into our rivers. So we've got to figure out a way to solve that problem. That problem is going to take a lot of engineering, it's going to take a lot of money, and it's going to take a lot of political will to make sure when we do developments, when we want to do developments, we want to grow, that we do them smartly, that we do them sustainably, so that we're not just polluting our rivers and our drinking water and our recreational water. So these are the challenges that we have. And there's nobody that's going to have all the answers. Certainly not going to be me. It's not going to be, the county executive, a state rep, a Congress representative, a mayor. It's all of us working together to try to figure out what is the best solution to the myriad of problems that we have. And we have a lot of them. We have a lot of problems, a lot of opportunities, a lot of challenges, but we have a lot of resources to do it. And I'll just give you one, one other one that we all know about is our great green space and our great park system. And I can just talk about the county parks, for example. We own 12,000 acres of parkland in Allegheny County. A couple thousand right here, South Park, probably a park every one of us uses for family outings, uses for exercise, uses for Little League football, all the different things that we like to do. How do we pay for that park? How do we upkeep that park? I love that park, but you know what? There's a lot of things in that park that need work. If you've seen some of the buildings, if you've seen some of the houses, if you've seen some of the structures, you know that they haven't been maintained over the last couple of decades the way they should be. So how do we pay for that? How do we do that? Do we raise people's taxes? People don't necessarily like that kind of thing. Do we deal with, corporate sponsorships? Well, that could be good, but you got to do that in a good way, because if you're going to turn over our assets to a company, what are they going to do with that? Are they going to treat it in a way that we would want them to treat it? So, these are some of the challenges and some of the opportunities that we have. We have these great things that make people want to live here, make us want to raise our families here, our grandchildren stay here, but we've got to make sure that we keep that going. And that's the challenge of those of us who are in government. I know there's a lot of council people who are here tonight, and we wrestle with these problems, and we listen to folks who have suggestions, and folks who have complaints, and folks who want to make it better. And that's a thing we want to work on. So I will say I relish the job that I've been given. I love doing what we're doing. We have a great community. We're in a great time in which we're doing well. We want to continue to do well. We want to continue to make this a place where young people live, where our grandchildren can grow, and we eventually close those Steeler bars down in other cities because there aren't any Pittsburghers anymore that are there because they're back in Pittsburgh. So with that, I wanted to open it up to some questions that you might have. You might have of me, you might have of whether it be county government, whether it be other things that are going on in the region, we might be able to answer. But I wanted to throw that open and open up to any questions some people might have. I'll start right over here.
Rich, what's your position on that proposed transportation solution in downtown Pittsburgh and Oakland? Can you amplify what's being discussed?
Yeah, it's called the BRT, Bus Rapid Transit, and one of the things we've always had a challenge is how do we link downtown and Oakland? Those are the two largest job centers in the region. In fact, the second and third biggest in the state, behind downtown Philadelphia. Right now, if you work in downtown Pittsburgh and you have a business meeting or a meeting in Oakland, you know, you've got to figure out a way to go get your car out of a garage in downtown Pittsburgh. That's no easy thing to do. Then fight the traffic, you know, driving down Forbes Avenue towards Oakland. Then you got to find a place to park in Oakland. You park your car, get out of a garage, you know. What we need to do is have a link that you can go back and forth very quickly. But it's got to be dependable, meaning it's got to come every 5 minutes or every 6 minutes. It's got to be quick. You know, it should take 8 or 9 minutes to get back and forth, and it should be fairly affordable. So that's the goal. We think we can build one for about $200 million, and I know that sounds like an awful lot of money, but if we use, say, light rail, like we did on the subway extension over into the North Shore, it would probably cost about $2 billion to build. The other part of it is if we waited for light rail, it would probably take 15 or 20 years. When we built the subway extension that just opened up last March, it was about 16, 17 years in the making. It's great now. I mean, for people that live in the South Hills and go to a Steeler game, they don't have to drive their car anymore. They can take that train all the way right to Heinz Field or all the way right to PNC Park without fighting the traffic, sitting in the parking lot after the game, paying $50 or whatever it is to park your car there. So we want to do the same thing with Oakland, and I think what it'll also do is it'll spur development in the area between downtown and Oakland, that 4-mile gap between the two of them through, it's called Uptown, along where Fifth Avenue High School used to be located, for those of us that are of a certain age and know where that was. We went and saw Cleveland. We saw what they did in Cuyahoga County. And Cleveland had the very same thing, where they had their downtown area and their eds and meds, where Cleveland Clinic and Case Western Reserve are about a little further away, maybe 7 or 8 miles. Well, a couple of years ago, they built a BRT, a bus rapid transit. And what a BRT is, just like a subway car, but it's on the road. It's a dedicated lane, dedicated signals. You go much faster. You're not fighting traffic because you have your own lane. And they have spurred about $5 billion worth of private investment along an area that in between very much resembled our Uptown area in the area. So working with Mayor-elect Peduto, it's something that he would like to see along the city. But I think it would really help grow those two areas, downtown and Oakland, and have more jobs and take some of the cars off the road.
Thank you.
Somebody else? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and where will the BRT hub be in relation to the T for the South Hills?
My guess is it'll be somewhere in downtown Pittsburgh near Grant and 5th, somewhere around there, which is also where the light rail system is. That's where the Steel Plaza station gets off. So I think it'll be somewhere near there. That's yet to be determined. It's still on the drawing, kind of the drawing stages. But you want something that you can link the light rail to, that can be close like a block or two away, where you can get off of it and get to Oakland. The other part of it is it won't be a bus like you think of where it stops every 2 or 3 blocks. It might only stop every 10 or 12 blocks. So it might have 3 stops between Oakland and downtown. You'll have major stations. It won't just be a bus stop or a shelter like you think of now. it'll be a much broader, much bigger type of operation. That's what they did in Cleveland, and boy, I tell you, it's been very successful.
And ever since I went to Boston, one of my big people in the transit system is, it doesn't go far enough. It's twice as expensive to go a third of the way. And in Boston, they tell you when the T is coming every time. When the next one will be here in 2 minutes. One just left for this line. Like,
You are a woman after my own heart, because the Port Authority is finally doing that. We finally have, you'll be able to look on your smartphone, and if your bus is the 62B, you'll be able to look and see where the 62B is and when it's coming. And that's actually rolling out now. We're doing it on the East Busway. There's going to, and after the first of the year, it's going to roll out.
In the stations too, though.
And the stations, exactly, where you'll be able to see up on the board, it's coming in 4 minutes, it's coming in 8 minutes, and that's absolutely, it's been something that's driven me crazy and for a long time. But we're making the Port Authority more customer friendly, more efficient, and more answerable to those type of things. So, yes, ma'am.
While we're on the subject of transit, I want to make two comments. By the way, I lived in Cleveland and worked in healthcare administration. I'm very familiar with that system, and you're right, it's a dandy, but it would do a lot of good for the Oakland Pittsburgh connection. You've done a lot of good things for ensuring transit and rapid transit for this area, and I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you for that. I followed a lot of that in the paper. One of the interesting things in your remarks, we haven't heard anything mentioned about the older residents of Allegheny County, and one of the hats I wear is a gerontologist. At Bethel Park, for example, I looked up the census data. We have 20% of our residents 65 and older. So I don't know if your office does anything or is promoting. I know we have a lot of good services for older adults. I would also encourage that if we get more funds for transit, that we rethink some of the stops that were eliminated. Some of my neighbors have talked to me about they had to buy cars, they had to walk in the dark, and reestablish some of those stops in Bethel that were taken away, because that makes for a great community for a lot of us, the older adults, the younger people who go into town, and so on and so forth. So, any thoughts about that?
Well, you've hit on a lot of different things. Number one, you're absolutely, the seniors are very, very important. And if I would ever neglect the seniors, my mother and father, who are seniors, would be all over me. No, our Allegheny County Department of Aging and senior centers, we continue to fund them. I are going to continue to support them all across the region, because I think it's one of the great ways we have quality of life, where people, when they are retired, have a place to go to compare notes with people their own age, with people that are in their community that they can stay connected to. I think it's really important. But one of the other things I think is important is to connect seniors with young people too, because I think there's a real healthiness and a real vitality that comes when younger people get to learn from seniors. And I think it's something that sometimes there's a disconnect that I'm not crazy about. On the stops, I guess I'll take responsibility for some of the elimination of those stops, because one of the things I wanted to make sure is that if you get on at the end of the line, whether it's at St. Clair Village or whether it's in Bethel or Library, that you can get into downtown Pittsburgh if you're going to work there in a fairly reasonable amount of time. And we had one of the highest concentrations of stops, meaning close together, in the country, taking the longest time to get to get a mile or a mile and a half or 5 miles on the trip. So we were trying to make the system more efficient, more effective, make it, again, more customer friendly. It's a balance. Do we get it right all the time? I won't say that we will, but it's something that we want to keep working on. We did one in Castle Shannon. I think we eliminated maybe one or two in Bethel. We restored one in Bethel, in fact, it was Councilman Gascap who showed me at the time all the investment that this community had made in an apartment and condominium village that had actually built their own steps down to the stop, and we made sure that was restored. So, it's one of those things that we are working on. We're trying to balance, but absolutely, seniors are critically important part of this region, and they're like kind of the backbone it's all the young people that really kind of get to come in and live off the good work and the good investment that the generations before them did for them. So, you're right. So, yes?
Since older people do not usually travel on a streetcar between 8 and 10 and say 5 and 7, why can't some of those stops be open from 1 to 3 or 12 to 3? On occasion, I mean certain hours.
That's a good point.
They have to go
That's a good
to
point.
Pittsburgh or Oakland. They can at least.
They know the stop will be coming.
Yes.
Yeah. Some of the stops, if they're permanent stops, it might take some money to do that, so that might be, but if it's just a regular stop anyway, I will pass it along. It makes a lot of sense. It really does. Thanks for that suggestion. Yes, sir.
Going to the light rail, can some of these stops be painted with some frequency? It looks a bit shabby when you come to Bethel Park and go along the trolley line and these stops aren't painted. They're bubbling, they're scaling. Looks like we live in a depressed community.
That's another good point. One of the things that I wanted to do when I came into office was to make transit not the negative kind of something that we didn't like very much and was not respected into something that not only would people like, but the image would be better. Because one of the things we've got to do is we've got to attract advertising dollars, sponsorship dollars, the corporate community to invest in exactly what you're talking about. We've started to do that. You might have seen a lot more advertising on our buses lately. The Penguins are advertising more. A lot of different corporations are advertising on our buses, on our light rail. Because early on, people didn't want to be associated with the Port Authority. They didn't want their corporate name on the Port Authority because it had a bad image and a black eye. So now that the image is becoming more positive, we're able to get corporate sponsors who want to be part of the Port Authority. So one of the things we're going to start doing more often is maybe we get, it's a place you're talking about, a corporate sponsor who will be the owner of that area, and they will fix it up, and they will, they'll paint their logo on it or they'll put their advertising on it, but it'll make it a more customer-friendly place. And I'll give you one quick example of a region that did this. SEPTA, Southeastern Pennsylvania Transit Agency, which is Philly's multi-county transit agency. It's big. They carry 1 million riders a day. Port Authority, by comparison, takes about 200,000, about a fifth to a quarter of those amount. They, in Philadelphia, SEPTA sold the naming rights and sponsorship rights to their downtown ballpark location, which would be our North Side station, to AT&T for $5 million over 5 years. Now, they painted it up. They obviously have their logo on it. It's beautiful. Doesn't cost the taxpayers $1. It didn't cost anything to raise taxes or to raise fares, but you still got that kind of nicer feeling than peeling paint and rotting wood or rusting metal. So those are the kind of things that we're trying to look to do. And if we could get some sponsorship for maybe the whole line, maybe the South Hills line will be the UPMC line or the Highmark line or the PNC, those type of opportunities that we might be able to do that, again, can be tastefully done but cannot put burden on the taxpayer. Yes, sir.
What's the feasibility of using the 1,000 prisoners in downtown in the county jail to come on into South Park, North Park, and some of the other parts to help rehab a little bit?
Well, we've done some of that. We're actually using some working with the courts and working with the judges. They have sentenced some of the low risk, if you will, or people that obviously not the murderers and the rapists and the violent criminals, but people that are in on a more minor charge to do those kind of things. And we haven't done it in the parks per se, but we've been doing it in some of our other public works facilities. But it's actually something that I think is the right thing to do if we can do it in a cost-effective manner. You got to make sure you're not spending more on transport and guarding the workers than you are saving on the workers themselves. But I think it's a good idea. Number one, nothing's better than good hard work during the day, I think. and, rather than just sitting around in their cell, and then they can, in serving their sentence, they can serve the community by helping fix up the community. I think it's a very, very good idea. Yes.
Two-part question, or two questions actually. I guess you'd be pretty happy. I don't know. I don't want the words in your mouth. But what do you think about Bill Peduto being the new mayor? And what are we doing in Pittsburgh with all our bridges and our tunnels to keep us safe from terrorism? We have a lot to cover.
It is, when we talk about those, quote, challenges, that's one of them. How do we pay and do all of our bridges? How do we repair them? How do we keep them well maintained, et cetera? All I can say is it's a challenge. The great thing about our community is it's a beautiful community. I don't know if you saw WQED just did a special, at least I just saw the special, where they, from over the air, they had this aerial view of Western Pennsylvania and the amount of green space and the hills and the valleys. I mean, we all know about it, but when you see it, it really is, it's startling. But with all those rivers and all those valleys, there's a lot of cost to get back and forth with bridges. So it's just something you got to try to maintain. You got to try to do the best that you can and find the resources to fix them. With Mayor Peduto, Bill Peduto and I have worked together for a long time. I was a very big supporter of his in running for mayor. I know his work ethic. Without going too far, I think the current mayor wasn't the hardest worker that there was, and I think we need somebody that's going to be on the job, meeting with people, putting his heart behind what he does. And I, having worked with Bill, because Bill's city council district overlapped my county council district, so we worked together for about 10 or 12 years on a lot of projects that happened in our respective districts. So I got to know, his philosophy, his heart, his willingness to really work hard and make communities better by, everybody kind of working together. So I think it's going to be a very good partnership with Bill when he gets sworn in January.
A comment back to the bridges. You probably know how the Montour Trail, they have fundraisers for putting in the bridge over the Roses up the park. And is there any way we can do such a similar thing for our bridges and somehow celebrate and do something like that for our bridges?
You can. I mean, the problem with some of the bridge, that the cost is immense. When we do a bridge like the Rankin Bridge, we're talking $30 million. You can't have enough bake sales or dances or golf outings. I mean, it's just, there's certain things that we're just unable to do. Our bridges are so spectacular. I'll give you another great bridge story that we did this year. We did something called yarn bombing. I don't know if you remember that story. You know what I'm talking about. We yarn bombed, whatever. When you hear the word bomb and bridge, that doesn't go well together. But what it is people knit panels like blankets, like my grandmother used to make for me, and they knit them together, weaved them together, and created this large tapestry, and it covered the Andy Warhol Bridge, which is the 7th Street Bridge in downtown Pittsburgh. And for 2 days, we shut the bridge down over a weekend in the summer. And there were 2,000 people that volunteered and came down there starting at 6 o'clock in the morning and stayed down there all day, making this tapestry, this beautiful bridge, largest one in the world. It was absolutely incredible. We didn't make any money on it. It didn't pay for the bridge. It didn't cost us any money either, basically. It was all volunteers. But it really brought a community together. It brought people together. They're sitting there knitting these things together. They're talking. Where are you from? I'm from Butler. Where are you from? I'm from Moon Township. I mean, it was a great thing to see our community come together. And then it stayed up for about a month, and it was just wonderful. It was fantastic. Wait, you had a couple. I got to give. Go ahead, in the back there. And I got about 10 more minutes because I have to run to a meeting in South Park. The Friends of South Park are waiting for me.
Along those same lines, the rubber duck was so popular in Pittsburgh. It'd be great if we had some kind of instrument like that, whatever it would be, to bring people to the city to watch that People spend millions of dollars downtown to see the rubber duck, and it's fantastic.
I was at the meeting the other day when they talked about the economic impact of the rubber duck and the amount of dollars that it generated. People coming downtown, staying overnight, hotel rooms, restaurants. And if you haven't been to downtown Pittsburgh recently, if you're down there tonight, Market Square is packed. The restaurants are full. The cultural district, the shows, it's just incredible. The amount of people that live in downtown Pittsburgh. It's a vibrant place, and it's just wonderful to have a city again that's hopping, and it's a great thing. I mean, the bad news is if you're down on a Friday night, you're going to wait in line to get a seat at a restaurant. That's the bad news. The good news is because of a lot of people and a lot of good things happening. We're opening about 10 restaurants a month in this community. That's fantastic. It really talks about the growth and some of the things that are going on. And I got two more. I mean, Jim, go ahead.
I know you're off to South Park, and most likely we'll probably talk about the question I'm about to ask. I'm just curious if you can enlighten us about the coal mine project potential at the South Park Oval.
Yeah, let me talk about the coal, and I also want to talk about fracking a little bit because I'm sure there's people that want to maybe hear about that a little bit. I talked about the 12,000 acres that we own. We, the county, we the taxpayers. That's a lot of land. I don't know if you can put your mind around what 12,000 acres is. If you've been to the city of Pittsburgh and you see Shenley Park, Shenley's a big park. Shenley's a little over 300 acres. I mean, as big as it is, 12,000 acres is immense. How do we pay for all the deferred maintenance? You know, when Vince and I got on county council, and Jim Roddy was a county executive, he did a study. We commissioned a study to see how much deferred maintenance was in our county parks. At that time, in 2001, it was $100 million. That number probably now is double that, or 180 million maybe, because we haven't done much in those last 13 or 14 years. How do we pay for that? So we go to a Friends of South Park meeting, and the Friends of South Park have a list of things that they want to do. Schoonermaker Hall needs to be torn down. The bleachers of the fairgrounds need to be repaired, they're crumbling. Trails need to be done. I mean, I could go on and on. It's about a $15 million wish list that the Friends of South Park have. We raised about $500,000 through our Parks Foundation privately. The state's kicking in another $500,000. So we have $1 million we're going to do in fixing up the field, the fairgrounds, do a little minor restoration. Nothing really major, quite frankly. And then we found out, and I'm a city boy, but you probably folks around here notice there's coal under the ground here. So people that have grown up here may have even worked in that industry. So somebody came to us and said there's coal under the fairgrounds. Well, what does that mean? How much would that be worth? Well, they said it could be to the county worth a couple of $1 million, maybe as much as $3 million. Well, if that's something we should take a look at, it's kind of detrimental, environmentally, not so crazy. Is it something we should do? So we went to the Friends of South Park and just kind of laid it out. We said, is this something you would want to do? If we could get $3 million, we would take $1.5 million of that and put it into South Park, fixing up some of the wish list that you have. Maybe the other $1.5 million would go maybe to the other parks. So we hired a geologist. We went through this process. And tonight, I'm basically going to go to South Park and ask the community what they want to do. Do they want to move forward and take a look at this, knowing that again, there might be some environmental things that we don't like, a lot of trucks, a lot of noise, a lot of dust, or is it something we shouldn't do? So those are the kind of things we want to take a look at. We might not do it, but I think for us to not even look at it and not even get the real facts would not be responsible. From the same point, fracking. We've got these 9 county parks, 12,000 acres. There's a lot of money in fracking. We signed a deal at the airport for over $500 million with Consol. We're taking a look at a park up in the northeast corner of the county, Deer Lakes Park. It's about a 1,100 acre park. All the neighbors around that park have leased out their land to drilling companies. Are going to be drilling up there. Is it something we want to participate in? Not necessarily letting people come onto our parkland, but if they're going to drill anyway and they're down 7,000, 8,000 feet, and they come under our park and we can get a lot of money Is it something we should take a look at? Well, it's something we're exploring. So those are the kind of things, Jim, that we're trying to kind of weigh. I don't think any decision's been made, but I think we're trying to gather some facts and see, how we can pay for some of these things. And I'm going to take one more, so I will get you get your second.
I would just like to say, I think that there's a lot of untapped resources in our eds and meds. And I mean, I've run into kids from Pitt and CMU that do great things with GIS, with problem solving, social net. And I just think if the county and the city would have a partnership with some of these, professors and groups, they could do a lot of great problem solving. These kids are so smart.
They are.
And I also think you should take the BRT out to Bakery Square and get Google to be a sponsor.
That could be. We actually do. There is kind of it's called the East Busway, but there is a BRT right behind Google, and we're building a stop for them, and they're going to pay. You're right on the track. Your first point, though, regarding the young people, it is something we do. We get these folks, they're called Coro Fellows, who come in and work with us and help us with our website, help us with. Yeah. It's a resource that's absolutely incredible, and they're great, not just to have here for the jobs that they provide, but for all the ingenuity that they give for us for government. So I want to thank you for okay, one more. Guy, you get one more.
I just want to make a comment. I'm from Westmoreland County. I grew up in Greensburg, but I left the street. I didn't get out of here like most of my friends did. And I had my kids in New Jersey. We were living in South Jersey.
These are two right here?
These two.
How old are you guys?
14.
Where do you guys go? Bethel? Oh, okay. Good.
Anyway, either way, we do half our life in Bethel anyway. We're 4 houses in Bethel. My mom fell and broke her hip. She lived in Waynesburg. By the time I had gotten back here to help her. But I came back and I could not wait to get to Allegheny County, and everybody warned me, please don't move to Allegheny County, you'll regret it, the taxes, blah, blah, blah. And my school taxes are high. I will say that. I don't think my county taxes are high, but others might say so. I don't. I think I get so many benefits from living in this county. But anyway, I just want to thank you for any part that you have played. We lived in South Jersey, like I said, in Morristown. It's a wonderful community, and I enjoyed my time there. But I was so happy to get back here from Boy Scouts in Bethel Park, which has the best Boy Scout troops, I must say, to the orchestras my kids have been in, all the sports, all the arts, everything about living here, from skiing to, you just name it. The only thing we don't have is the beach, so if you can work that out. Perfect. But it has been, I am so happy. Yeah, Mineral Beach. I'm so happy to have raised my kids here. I can't begin to tell you. Philadelphia never grew on me. I love Pittsburgh, and it's just been great.
Well, you could give my speech for me, so that's wonderful. And then the thing is, when these two kids get out of school, we want them staying here. We want them getting their jobs here. That's what this is all about, so that we can keep our families together. And that as a grandparent, I don't want to have to get on an airplane to go visit my grandchildren. I'm selfish that way, but I want to be able to go watch their game, go watch their ballet recital, etc. So I think that's what we all want to do.
I think Pittsburgh doesn't market out. We don't market ourselves very well. We're so humble about our own community.
The word's getting out there. I think people are starting. I'll give you one last story, because what you say, you struck a nerve with me, because I get to do these things. We had two delegations. We have delegations come from all over the place coming to see how can we be like Pittsburgh. We had 2 months ago a delegation from Atlanta, Georgia. The mayor of Atlanta, the business leaders of Atlanta, the Atlanta metro area, came to Pittsburgh to meet with our business leaders and our political leaders, because they want to know how they can do things more like we can to grow like us. Second story is Denver, Colorado. A delegation from Denver came about a month ago. The governor of Colorado, the mayor of Denver, and about 200 leaders in the community from Denver, same thing. How can we be more like Pittsburgh? That's a story 10 years ago nobody would have believed. Right now, people want to be like us, because we have all those special things. And I got to go run to South Park. I apologize.